Welcome to my channel. My name's Audrey and today is our first YouTube video and I'm going to show you how to make spaghetti sauce from fresh tomatoes. So earlier today I picked these actually from my garden. You don't need to use tomatoes from your garden, but you should use a good quality tomato. And a good tip is if you buy them from the farmer's market, you don't need beautiful tomatoes. Like these tomatoes have cracks in them and they're not perfect. But if you go to the farmer's market, you can generally ask the people working if they have any tomatoes that are bruised and battered, and they're generally going to be cheaper. They're going to be really ripe and really flavorful for the sauce. Actually, this is my second year growing tomatoes, and last year was kind of a fail. I didn't get much fruit because it was really hard to get the watering down. But this year I had a better time getting the watering, and I got a tip on Facebook actually to shake my bushes every morning, which sounds totally ridiculous, but it helps self-pollinate. So I've actually had a lot of fruit, which has been great. So to start the sauce, first we are going to turn on the oven and preheat to 400 degrees Fahrenheit. So I'm going to get out my sheet pan because we are going to roast these. And we're gonna start just by cutting them, quartering them into pretty big chunks. So I'm gonna move this over here so you can see what I'm doing. I ended up coming up with this recipe because I had so many tomatoes I didn't know what to do with, and it actually started with cherry tomatoes. So you can do this recipe with any kind of tomato, really. It just will change your baking time. So when I do this with cherry tomatoes, I only bake them for like 25-30 minutes. You will cook the larger tomatoes longer, like 45 minutes to an hour, even longer if they haven't browned and released all their juices. I have all of my tomatoes cut up here on my sheet pan, and it's really important that they're close together. So if you're doing this recipe without as many tomatoes or less tomatoes than I have, just make sure you bake them on a smaller baking sheet or a Pyrex or something that just is smaller than this, because you want them close together and you want to make sure that they retain all their juices. If you have them too spread out, all the juice is just going to dry up, and you need that for your sauce. So I have them cut up, I have them on my sheet pan, so now I'm just going to add my olive oil. And add a lot. You know, you don't need to be stingy with this. I would say for this many tomatoes, at least 1/4 cup, if not more. So I have my olive oil on, and now I'm going to add my salt and pepper. Again, lots of salt. The salt is what gives this flavor. It's a really simple sauce, so you need good ingredients and a good amount of salt and pepper. All right, and this is what they look like before I put them in the oven. And my oven is heated to 400 degrees, so it is ready to go. I have my tomatoes in the oven, and I'm going to set the timer for 45 minutes. They usually take about an hour, so 45 minutes is a good checkpoint just to see how they're cooking, if they're brown, and if they've released all the juice that they need to release. Okay, so now that the tomatoes are in the oven roasting, I am going to cut up an onion, and it doesn't need to be fine, you just need to cut it up, just a rough dice, and throw it in the pan and saute it with a good amount of olive oil and some salt for the entire time the tomatoes are in the oven. So just do it on low, really nice and slow, and just stir it every once in a while. So once the onions are really sauteed and soft and translucent, you're gonna add 2 tablespoons of chopped up or pressed garlic. And you're just going to cook that until everything is really cooked through and really, really soft. Okay, so now that the onions and garlic are cooked, I'm going to add 4 tablespoons of butter and let that cook down. We are going to add a whole cup of Chardonnay to the pot. And use a Chardonnay that you like to drink, because it's really gonna stand out in the taste of this. And then I'm just gonna turn the heat up and let this bubble to cook the alcohol out. No, you can't have any of that. And if you don't want to use Chardonnay, I would say use vegetable stock or chicken stock to substitute. Okay, so while the onions are simmering with the white wine and butter, I'm going to add the tomatoes to the blender. I'm gonna add a little bit more after I add the tomatoes because I don't want to overfill this blender. But So this is how this looks at this point. Everything's really soft and ready to go in the blender. And I'm just going to pour it on in. The main thing with adding the Chardonnay to this is that you have enough liquid so that it blends up really nice. So if you're not using Chardonnay, it is really important that you substitute for either a vegetable broth or a chicken broth, just so you have enough liquid. Okay, so at this point, it looks really smooth. I can't see any seeds off the top. And so that's about it. So at this point, I'm just gonna taste it and see if any salt or pepper needs to be added. No, I think it's perfect. And I think we're done. And if you like my video, don't forget to hit the thumbs up and subscribe to my channel. And stay tuned because next time I'm going to be making over my guest bedroom.